on the ferns.
Can you verbally connect for me from the spore fight to the gameto fight?
Yeah. Okay, so look. So I was using this picture form right here. So if you look in your lab manual on page 364, everybody is there in a nice picture, okay? So let's look in here real quick. We'll go through the life cycle. We're going to talk about this in lecture. So again, this won't be the last time you hear it. Okay? So this cycle right here, the life cycle, puts those pieces of sporophyte and gametophyte together. We'll start out with the part that you can see. We'll start out with the sporophyte. So here's a sporophyte. Okay, on the underside of that sporophyte that you have on your desk there, you've got the little brown spots that are called the sorus, right? The little sorus have the smaller circles that are called sporangium, and the sporangium make the spores, right? All right, we make spores. We make haploid spores by meiosis. So the sporophyte's diploid, 2N. We make haploid spores by meiosis. The haploid spores fall to the ground. The haploid spores that fall to the ground develop into what we just looked at, which is the gametophyte generation, which is haploid, because a haploid spore just starts to grow into a gametophyte. No sperm and egg fused, right? So it's just haploid. Now, on the haploid gametophyte, you've got the archegonia, which is female. It makes egg. Antheridia is male. It makes sperm. So there we can see our egg and our sperm. What happens when our egg and our sperm, which are haploid, unite? They make a zygote. Zygote is diploid, correct? That zygote will then start to grow from the prothallus, from the female, and it will grow into the next generation, which is the plant that you see, which is the sporophyte. Does that help?
So the gametophyte's going to make both?
In this case, in the fern,
it will make both.
It makes both.
Okay.
Okay? In the moss, you've got separate.
Okay.
Separate spores. One makes the male part, and one makes the female
So
part.
just the ferns are going to have both, or from the ferns on are going to have both?
It
male
depends.
and
Can't say that for sure. It depends on the plant. But for ferns, male, female, same gametophyte generation.
Is that for all ferns?
No.
Are you going to throw that out on the test?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is it different between the Boston fern?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe so. So I'm not sure if there are exceptions. I do not know about every single species of fern out there. Okay? Because each species is definitely different. I don't know. Okay? All right. Anything else? All right, so let's go on to the next group of plants. The next group of plants. So there are lots of different representatives here that we're going to be looking at. All right, so along with the ferns, there's a little picture down here on page 363 in your lab manual. In 363 in your lab manual, this is a horsetail at the bottom, okay? He's also a relative of the fern. He's over here as well. And so just to show you just a different variety of these guys, it's not just the ferns. We do have this thing here that is called a horsetail fern. We do call it a horsetail fern. So he is a relative of the ferns. He belongs to a phylum that is called Equisetaphida. His genus name happens to be Equisetum. Equus is horse, horse is tail. Because the way that certain structures kind of fan out, it reminds people that it look like a horse's tail. And that's the name. So there are just other examples back here. You're only responsible for knowing him as another example. He belongs to phylum Equisetaphida. He's a horsetail fern. That's all you need to know on this guy right here. Just another relative. Then we move into and there's nothing to look at under the microscope for these guys. Then we're going to move on to a group of plants that have kind of just a generic name. So look, we call these guys the gymnosperms. The gymnosperms is not a phylum name. It's simply a generic term. Okay? It's a generic term used to group together certain plants that have seeds. So we're moving from plants that reproduce using spores, the seedless plants, to the plants that reproduce using seeds. But there's lots of different seeds and there's different ways of classifying these guys. If you're a gymnosperm, you don't contain your seed within the protective layer of the female fruit. Okay, so we want to kind of separate these guys as what we would traditionally think of as seeds that are contained within a fruit and seeds that are not. And we all know seeds contained within a fruit. Apples, peaches, pears, oranges, bananas, right? Okay, these are not those guys. Okay? They bear their seeds just out there. They're there, they're out there, they're not contained with any kind of a fruit. They may hold them inside of a cone, okay, maybe, or they're just hanging out there on the tree, okay? There's no fruit, there's no protection of an ovary or anything like that. We call those gymnosperms. 3 phyla. Phylum Ginkgophyta. There's only one species of plant in phylum Ginkgophyta. He's the ginkgo tree. Ginkgo biloba. It's this guy right here. And you can see he's just got little old naked seeds that are just hanging out right there. They are born on little clusters on the female tree. This one is separate. You've got male and female trees. Male trees produce the sperm, female trees produce the eggs. We have a ginkgo tree out here. If you go to the Student Center from the front doors, the north entrance of this building, and if you go to the corner of Frells, you're going, here's Frells, the math building, and here's the Student Center. It's a big tall tree that probably doesn't have any leaves on it right now. That's the ginkgo tree. He should be growing his leaves pretty soon. And Mr. McReynolds is going to laugh at me. Is how do I know it's a he? I know it's a he. Because they only plant male trees. There's a reason. We'll talk about that in lecture why. But I know that's a male tree. All right. Then you have the other phyla here, phylum Psychedophyta. We call these guys the sago palms. They're not a palm tree. Palm trees are another group. It's kind of like one of those things that's kind of like the Texas horny toad. He's not a toad, he's really a lizard. Okay? He kind of looks like a palm tree, right? So that's kind of why they name him that. But he's not in the same family as your date palms or your coconut palms, because these guys make fruits. The coconut palms and the date palms make fruits. These guys don't. You see these everywhere. You'll see these lining the ornamentals of subdivisions. You'll see them in people's yards. They're hardy. It's very difficult to kill them, and they get huge. Okay, they grow great down here. They get too big. They're kind of a nuisance because they're kind of hooky. Okay, they're kind of annoying. They do produce cones. This is a male cone off of a sago palm right here. Okay, I don't have a female cone, but the female cone will bear the seeds. Okay, I've got several of these that are lining kind of the entrance to my subdivision, and the stoplight's right there, so you kind of see them in these big pots. And the females, you can see these little seeds right there growing. The seeds right now kind of have this kind of fleshy coating, but underneath that kind of fleshy kind of layer is this seed right here. And you can plant these and grow your own sago palms. Okay? So there are the seeds there. There's no fruit. This is how they are. They show up on a plant. They look like this. No fruits. It's just the way they are. Okay? So this is not like picking an apple off of a tree and then finding the seeds inside. It looks different. The last group and the most diverse group of the gymnosperms are the conifers. These are the ones that you're more familiar with. All of the variety of pine trees, fir trees. You have cedar. You have cypress. Those are all going to be conifers. So, depending upon the tree again, the ones that we have out here, the pine trees, produce both male and female cones on the same tree. kind of like the ferns did. Okay? Male cones are growing right now. Male cones, if you look out, we have a bunch of pine trees lining the kind of pathway there between here and the student center. You're going to see these little tiny cones that are growing at the ends of the tips of the branches. And they're fixing to turn bright, bright yellow here in the next few weeks. And for about 2 weeks, they drop massive amounts of pollen. And this is what gives, if you park your car outside anywhere where there's pine trees, or not, there couldn't be a pine tree in sight, you've got that lovely yellow dusting all over your car, right? I know what I'm talking about. It's plant sperm, basically. Your car is coated in sperm, okay? Now, also if you've got them around your yard and it rains, I mean, you'll see the yellow pollen just kind of move on down with the storm drain and the curbs, okay? So it's massive amounts. It's carried by the wind just to make sure that fertilization takes place. Female cones, on the other hand, stay on the trees for long periods of time. They stay on the trees for years, okay? So it takes a very long time, we'll talk about this in class, for fertilization to take place and for the seed to actually develop in a pine tree. Here in this dish, I've got a variety of little tiny pine cones. These are immature pine cones. And they're in various stages and sizes and shapes. And so obviously they will get progressively bigger. These are all from pine trees, the same species. And then you'll see them looking like this, right? So those are immature. They become mature when these scales open up. And they look like this. These are 2 regular old pine cones. Okay, what we would normally see. Alright? So these are mature. Inside there, and on this one I don't see one, because I probably picked most of them out. And I've shown students. Yeah. You'll see seeds in there. Okay, I'll show you on this one.
Are they red?
Okay, this is not a regular old pine tree. But you'll see these little flaky, papery things in there. And I won't pull these out because they're not ready and they won't come out. But basically, if I pull one of these little tiny papery ones, you know, that these are hard, and you can kind of feel that's kind of papery, you can hear it. Okay, they look like this. So if I pull one out, I've got this little wing kind of thing, and this little seed on it. Okay? Why do you think there's a little papery wing on it? Okay, so when the wind catches it, it spins like a little helicopter, and it blows away from the parent seed dispersal, get it away from the perennial plant to increase its chances of survival. All right, so variety types and shapes and sizes. The guys in the dish right here, these are just regular old ones from our pine trees out here. These are from pinyon pines, and then you can also buy them in the grocery store. How many of y'all eat pine nuts? Pine nuts, it's really not a nut. You know, they're one of those things that's misnamed. It's a pine seed is all it is. You can eat them from the pinyon pines. Pinyon pines are the ones that you're going to see like in New Mexico. Certain times of the year, they'll have the pine nut like festivals in New Mexico, and they'll roast them, and it smells really good. And you toast up your pine nuts, and you can eat those in your soup salads, pestos, whatever you want. They're very delicious. They're edible. Now, how many of y'all have seen these, especially out here? Okay. Why do they look like this? Anybody know? Huh?
Would it roll? Kind of like...
Nope. This is one that's destroyed. Okay, so he looks like this. He used to look like this. Okay, why does it look like this? What happened to this one? Who did it? The squirrels did it. Okay? Squirrels do it. So squirrels go out there, they pull these little pine cones, they strip off the scales. What are they trying to get at? They're trying to get pine seeds. So when you see these have been stripped clean by a squirrel. Okay? Alright. Okay, I got a variety of pine cones, regular oak pines, a variety of shapes and sizes. This is a fir. These are what we would call, these are Christmas trees. Their scales are a little bit more papery. I do want to point this little guy out right here. You see this guy right here? This is a mature female pine cone of the giant sequoias. So, okay, it's kind of a paradox, okay? The giant sequoias that are meters high, you know, in the forest, and you keep looking up, that's one of the smallest pine cones. Mature pine cones right here, okay? So, only thing I don't have Because I don't have a pine seedling, so this kind of shows you the whole kind of life cycle kind of going on here. Male pine cones produce sperm, they fertilize the eggs, the cones mature, the seeds drop down, and you get a little pine seedling. So sometimes I have them in my yard, and if I have one in my yard, I'll pluck it out and I'll bring it in here and show you the little tiny little pine seedling growing. So he's not there right now. If I don't have one, then we won't put one on. All right, so let's look at pine cones. Really, the male pine cone. He should be number 83, the staminate pine cone. And in your lab manual, it is on page 338, right here. We're going to look at this guy right there. Okay? All right, so there you go. So this is what one of those little male pine cones looks like. And there's only two things that, first of all, what you need to know is you need to be able to tell me what pine cone this is. So this is a male staminate pine cone. Staminate refers to a male reproductive structure that produces pollen. You'll see stamens when we talk about flowers. All right, so if I put this on here and I tell you, what am I looking at? It is a male pine cone, male staminate pine cone. Two parts you have to label. Each one of these little sections that you see is called a pollen sac. What do you think's inside the pollen sac? Pollen. Okay. All right, so let's look at the pollen. A little bit higher magnification because it's kind of neat.
So the microsporangium is the pollen sac? Or is that
What do they have it labeled as here?
microsporangium?
The pollen sac, yes. Pollen sac. All right, so if you look at these, the little pollen grains look like they've got little wings on them, even. Okay, and so like right here, they're kind of like Mickey Mouse ears. Okay, so again, it's for dispersal by the wind. And pollen grains of different species are going to have unique features to them. Okay. All right, any questions? All right, so the pollen turns bright yellow. Pay attention to the pine trees. If you walk back and forth, you'll see it turn. The pine cones, the male pine cones will kind of just be this fleshy color, and then they'll just get bright, bright yellow. And that bright yellow, that pollen is fixing to just come right out of that and just be carried by the wind. Then what it's going to do is it's going to land, hopefully, on a female pine cone. And it's going to kind of dig its way through that female pine cone. So let's look at what's called the female ovulate pine cone. So there's a female ovulate. Mice urinated and defecated in the sink, and it's smelly. I'm going to clean it. It's kind of gross. It's a little smelly over here. They literally had the pee and the poop scared out of them. Aw, it's food. They're mice. Alright, so we're looking at a female. So now I can ask you, what's this whole thing that we're looking at? The whole thing is